Covent Garden. Here's the map of our journey so far. Let's see where Covent Garden is. Well, we are still in West London and north of the river, so that's good. Now let's see our last stops and see where Covent Garden fits in with the other locations. Leicester Square, Oxford Street, Soho, Upper Street, Whitechapel, where Jack the Ripper haunted, Brick Lane and the Tower of London, Baker Street, Buckingham Palace, and here is Carnaby Street and Covent Garden. Okay, we are going to take a quick look around and through Covent Garden Market. There is a lot of history for this location, and I mean a lot. And we do not have enough time to look at all the history in this short film. So I'm going to give you some of the main points and a little bit of history of my own. The area of Covent Garden was once part of a Roman town just outside Roman London in around 340 AD. So that likely means that people lived there long before the Romans arrived. Bloody Romans. It is thought that Alfred the Great around 800 AD started to join the old town to London, and the area of Covent Garden first gets mentioned as a garden in 1200 AD, as there have been documents found from 1250 to 1283 naming the area as the Garden of the Abbot and Convent of Westminster. It was a walled garden at that time. Around the 1500s, it had changed hands and become known as Covent Garden. Right, that's the start of how it got its name. And then a load of other stuff happened. In the 1600s, King Charles I had the hump with the area and the roads and the way things looked. So he told a load of posh blokes to sort it out. So they built a church and some posh houses around a piazza or square. The rich people moved into the posh houses and had a lovely time. Until in 1654, on the south corner of the square, a market started to be held, followed by coffee houses and pubs of the time. This, of course, brought in the prostitutes. Posh people moved out, and by the 1800s, Covent Garden was well known as a red light district. The Market Hall building was built in 1830, and we common people ruled the area. Then some more stuff happened. Here is a picture of Covent Garden Square or Piazza in 1660. As you can see, there is no market hall in the middle, it's just a big square, and that is St. Paul's Church. Now, if you look closely at the church, can you see? There are some differences from how it looks today, and I'm not sure if this is poetic license of the artist, but if you look closely, the church has 4 windows at the front, where in today it only has 2, and I can see no evidence of there ever being 4. And if you look, the 2 windows that are there were arched, and the facade around the door looks larger, and the door looks larger than it is today. But again, I can see no evidence that anything's changed. The columns are, as I believe from my school days, are Doric columns. As you can see, they're the simple ones without any flurries at the top. And they look slightly different at the bottom. And if you look again at the bottom, you can see that there are a number of steps leading up to the church, which are not there today. So it must mean that over the years that the floor level has risen, perhaps with all the building work. I mean, I suppose that is normal over hundreds of years. And here, if you look here in King Street, the houses along that street do look a little bit different as they do today. So there must have been quite a lot of redevelopment since the 1660s, when often we'll walk around London thinking these buildings have been there for hundreds of years. But it's likely these were the houses that we see in King Street now are not original to the square being tarted up by King Charles I, as I mentioned earlier. The square, as much as we can see, you can see the arches from the building there, where the Apple Store is now. It still looks pretty much the same from 1660. The market sold fruit and veg and did very well until the 1960s. It was becoming really hard to get round London with all the traffic. It closed as a wholesale distribution market in the early 70s. Believe it or not, there were plans to knock it down in 1973, but that got stopped. And the market hall laid empty until 1980 when it reopened. Now, I have memories of the old market. I believe I must have been taken there in the early 70s, as I remember the fruit and veg market there, but I would have only been very young. Still, I do remember things quite well from my childhood. Maybe that's my autism. I also remember the market in the 80s when it reopened. It was not like what you see today. Covent Garden went through another change, you see, in the early 2000s to what you see today. In the 80s, it was a little more Camden Market than it was Covent Garden Market. There were bars in the south side pits that played live music, and I remember going there in our indie music days, late night drinking and trying to catch the eye of indie music girls. But I don't remember that ever working though. This pit here is where one of those bars was situated, and there was another bar in the other pit behind this. I can't quite remember which bar was the one that we went to the most, but one was a bit posher than the other, so we didn't really go to the posh one.
basically making it work. But it's
Well, that was Covent Garden and a very potted history. Just before I go, I thought you might like to see an old lane nearby. I love finding these, and I like to imagine what it must have been like living in old London in the days of these very narrow and claustrophobic streets, and there were lots more of them in the olden days. I bet it was bloody horrible, but they are very nice to look at now and wander down. If you ever come to London, make sure you try to find these little streets, these little lanes and alleyways, because they are quite atmospheric and makes you feel what it must have been like, well, a little bit back then. Thanks for watching. Take care.